Namaste and good morning, everyone. Let's start the class with Gayatri Mantra and one more mantra where we are praising Lord Krishna and Bhagavad Gita also, because this is the scripture which we are studying in this class. We got to have respect for the scripture which we are studying if we want to get something out of it. So that's why this mantra is. Another reason for the reciting the mantra is to bring our scattered mind into full concentration. So when there's a concentration only, then we can absorb the subject matter. Om Bhur Swaha Tatsavitra Varenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dhiyo Yo Nah Prachodayat. So this is called a Gayatri Mantra, where we are praying to God for a higher level of intellect. Then now the Bhagavad Gita, we are saying it is like a essence of all the Upanishads in Bhagavad Gita. Sarvaro Upanishado Gago Dogda Gopal Nandana Partho Vatsaha Sudhir Bhogata Dugdam Gita Amritam Mahat. So last week we were talking about Karam Yog. That is the third chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Karam Yog. Okay. Karam means action. And as human beings, we constantly act. But how to make our actions so that we can attain perfection and we become one with God? That is a Karam Yog. Yog means the union, and union between the soul and God. That is yoga. So we saw in this chapter, in the beginning, Arjun got a little confused. He said, you talk about the knowledge, you talk about the action. I'm confused. I don't know what to do. Because the action which you are you are convincing me to do is such a bad action. I'll have to kill these people who are standing in front of me. You say knowledge is better. Why can't I just go into the jungles and meditate over there and attain that ultimate knowledge? So Lord Krishna gives him all kinds of reasons in this chapter also. He says, sure, certain people, they have already achieved that level where they understand they are the Atma. They can sit and meditate for the rest of their life. But to you, as a prince, you haven't reached there yet. You need to attain that perfection by doing the karam. What kind of a karam? Your duty. And as a prince, your duty is to protect the citizens. So this is what you are supposed to do. Because that's what your vasanas are made up of. You got to wash these vasanas, these impressions in your mind. Even if you go somewhere and you think you're meditating, you won't be meditating. You'll be thinking about this war or thinking about the people, how you can protect them. That's a hypocrisy. Then he gives the example of King Janak also. He said, King Janak and other kings also, royal kings, they attained this perfection by doing their duties. Then he gave the example of a Brahma also, the creator himself. He said he created while doing the karam. Then he gave his own example also. He says there's nothing need to be done for me in this world or in three worlds. But I still do my duties. But I don't get attached to the fruits. I just do it for the sake of doing the duty. And that is a Karam Yog. He says, if I do not engage myself action, the people will follow my path. Because the masses always imitate their leaders and heroes. The way the heroes behave, the way they dress, the way their actions are, the way their moral values are, the masses follow them. So he says, I don't want to delude people. I don't want them to go towards the wrong path. Then how to do the work? He says, as the ignorant person act from attachment to the action, so should the wise person act without attachment, wishing the welfare of the world. Welfare means, the Sanskrit word he used is lok sangraha. That means guiding the world, taking the people towards the right path. He says that should be the motive. Do not get attached to the work, do not get attached to the fruit of the work either. That is a Karam Yog. Because he says ignorant person is motivated by the fruits. That means attachment and the anxieties for the fruits. What will I get if I do this? That's, he says, that's ignorance. Your motive should be, as a Karam Yogi, that I want to help others. I want to lead others on the proper path. Then further advice he gives to Arjun, and through Arjun to us also. He says that no wise man unsettle the minds of ignorant people. So you think you are wise now, you are on that path, but do not disturb other people because they are attached to action. He says the wise person should engage them in all actions, himself fulfilling them with devotion. So you see that your goal is the union with God. Others, they are still attached to the actions. Do not disturb their minds. Do not say that you are the fools. You are attached to the actions. And in what way is an ignorant person attached to action? This is the verse which Nishtha was talking about, that all actions are performed in all cases merely by the qualities in nature, the gunas of the Prakriti. See, qualities is, it's very hard to translate this gun word, but closest is the qualities. And qualities means the positive, the negative, or in between. He whose mind is deluded by egoism think, I am the doer. I am the doer. He says, I is the Atma, the soul. Atma doesn't do anything. Who is doing it? The Prakriti is doing it. So he says anybody who's deluded is ignorant. And then he gives a method of discrimination by which we can easily develop the required amount of detachment. Because he says that spiritual ignorance expresses itself at the intellectual level as a desire, which again in the mental zone manifests as thoughts. And those mental thoughts, they are colored by our mental tendencies. Sattvic, tamasic, those are the gunas. They manifest themselves into the actions. So this identification with the mind, the mental condition, creates the false sense of ego, that I am doing it, because you're identifying yourself with your mind. And that's the one arrogates to itself the idea, I am the doer. And the doer, of course, demands the fruits of the action. I did it, I want it. But opposite of this, the wise person, he who knows the truth about the divisions of the qualities and their functions, and he who knows that gunas as the senses move among the gunas as objects. So that means in the nature, outside in the objects, they all have these three gunas. Our mind also has these three gunas. Our body also three gunas. So it's only the gunas in the objects and the gunas of our body and the senses The wise person understands and does not get attached. So ignorant person gets attached to the fruits and to the actions also. Wise person does not get attached. In wise person, attachment has no place, he says. And how does that happen? How come a wise person is not attached? Because his discriminating understanding in all activities is that his mind that projects out to form the actions, because there were some thoughts just solidified into the actions. That's all. So that's why he says the actions performed by the ignorant person is always attached to the fruits, and for a wise person, they are not. So this discrimination. So discrimination over here means knowing the difference between what is truth, what is untruth, what is Prakriti and what is Purush. Purush means the Atma, the soul. So this kind of a discrimination. Then he says in verse number 30, renouncing all actions in me. This is another way a wise person acts. Renouncing all actions in me means God, with the mind centered on the self. So that means mind focused on the soul, free from hope and egoism, free from mental fever. He says, fight like that. Do your actions like that. These two terms, hope and ego. What does that translate into? Should we live a life like a hopelessly? No. This hope means do not keep your mind in the future period. Hope is always for the future. And ego is always about the dead past, how much I have done. So do not keep your mind either on the past or in the future while you are doing the action. And then he says, mind soaked with the devoted remembrance of the self. Self means soul, the Atma. So live in the present moment. All the feverish anxieties, let go. That is a mental fever. Mental fever is anxiety, the stress, greed, any kind of a emotion which takes us away from that full concentration is a fever. Fever means it's like a little turbulence in our mind, agitation of the mind. So free from hope and ego. So this is the purification method of the purification of our mind. Do not keep your mind while you are doing the action. Do not take it into the past or into the future. Live in the present. That's a very popular saying these days. Live in the present. So those people who constantly practice this teaching of mine, Lord Krishna says, full of faith, without cavilling, they are also freed from the actions. Freed from action means they are Karam Yogis. But those who carp at my teaching and do not practice this, deluded in all knowledge, devoid of discrimination, know them to be doomed to destruction. This is one thing we see throughout Bhagavad Gita. He says that if you do this, you will attain this. If you don't, this is what will happen to you. Attachment and aversion for the objects of the senses abide in the senses. It's a very powerful statement. Let none come under their sway. Why? Because they are the enemies. They are his foes. That's why one object for one person is very important. For the other person, it's not the same object. So that means attachment or the aversion abide in our own senses, not in the object. Think about it. On all occasions, a wise person should be a master of the senses, not a helpless victim. See, this is what we need to work on. This is what the spirituality is all about. Become the master of your body. These are our senses, our eyes, our nose, our hearing, our touch, taste, 5 senses. And the secret of this mastery in life is to live free from these attachments and the aversions. Attachment is something good happens, we just like a repetition of that. Something bad happens, we just want to avoid it. Physically, we want to avoid it, but mentally, it's still inside us. That is called aversion. Likes and dislikes, they belong to the ego. Ego means the false sense of I. For the Atma, there is no likes and dislikes. All egoless acts accomplish a purgation of vasanas. And again, let me tell you what vasana is. The impressions in our deeper mind we have brought from the past. Some even this lifetime and a lot of it from the past lifetimes. So we need to purge them. Vasanas create the mind. Where the mind is, ego revels there. And what is the method by which we can bring the purgation of these vasanas? Is beautifully explained in verse number 35. He says, better is one's own duty, though devoid of merit, than the duty of another well discharged. Better is death in our own duty than the duty of another we should fraught with fear, because it's full of positive danger. So in other words, act according to your own taste. Inborn and natural. He calls it a swadharma. We all have our own duties. Sometimes we say we don't know what our duty is. If you don't know it yourself, go to your guru, find out. Just like Arjun. Arjun could not figure it out. He wanted to run away. He thought his duty was to just go into the jungles and meditate now. But then at the same time, you're my guru, tell me what to do. And his guru said that this is your duty. That's how you will clean your vasanas. That's how you will be able to recognize who you are. Swadharam. Arjun's Swadharam as a prince was to wage this war at this point. Because it's dangerous to suppress your own personality expression. And you want to copy somebody else. Because your own impressions are still there and you're adding more impressions of somebody else's. So that's why it's so dangerous. Now look at Arjuna. How seriously he is listening to his guru. Because from his question of his, we can see this question is asked in verse number 36. He says, but by what impelled does a person commit sin? Though against his wishes, constrained as it were by force. So he has become introspective. So he says that I know what to do. I know what is the right thing to do, but still I end up doing something wrong. It's almost like a saying, we all know that we should not lie, but still we end up lying here and there. What makes us do it? What is that power inside us sitting makes us do the wrong things? How do we get tempted? Lord Krishna says, listen, I shall tell you who that enemy is. Because he's asking clearly what that enemy is. He says, I'll tell you what that enemy is. Or who is the source of all that evil, sinful actions. very direct answer in verse number 37. He says, it is desire. Kam. It is anger, krodh, born of the active, all devouring, all sinful. Know this as the enemy here in this world. Now, Lord Krishna illustrates how desire is our enemy and how it veils our intelligence. Or the higher intelligence is called vivek, the discrimination. He says it is enveloped, just like a fire is enveloped by smoke, as a mirror by dust, or as an embryo by the womb. So this wisdom is enveloped by that desire and anger. These three examples are pertaining to the three kinds of natures, the gunas. Fire is covered by smoke. You just fan it a little, you will be able to see the fire. That is a sattvic nature. Mirror by the dust, you got to scrub it a little or put some kind of a detergent on it. That is like a rajasic nature. Embryo by the womb, it will take its time. That is a tamasic nature. So some of us have tamasic desires, and outcome of that is tamasic anger also. Will hurt somebody. Some people have the rajasic desires just to have something for themselves, agreed. And rajasic anger also. But some of us have the sattvic desire to help somebody. That is a sattvic desire. And a sattvic anger also sometimes come in. Like a mother is trying to teach the child doesn't want to learn, and mother will have to use some harsh words. Because the motive behind that harsh word is what? To put the child on the right path. That is a sattvic anger, sattvic desire. Not trying to hurt the child, not to put the child down. Our desires could either be low and vicious, or our ambitions may be to achieve power and wealth, to gain strength, might, to win fame and glory. So that's why the desires can be tamasic, sattvic, rajasic. But remember, desire is that which hides the divine in us. That's what Lord Krishna is saying. We forget who we are. Desire is that which hides the divine in us. So there should be a time, sure, to live in this world, we have to have desires, but there should be some time devoted where we just let go of all our desires, even the sattvic desires. Sure, tamasic desires we should not have, low and vicious we should not have. Power and wealth, those are rajasic. In order to live in this world, we got to have that. In order to progress, we got to have those, but still we got to contain those. We should not just let them just keep on multiplying. But ultimately, we are here to know ourselves. Now the question is, where are the desires? Where do they reside? Do they reside? Because he said earlier, it's not in the object. So then what's it? Verse number 40, very clear answer. He says the senses, the mind, and the intellect are the seat of the desire. Through these, it dilutes the embodied by veiling his wisdom. So we got to hunt for desire in these three hideouts. We got to come face to face with it. Because when we recognize them, only then we can overcome this inner enemy which Lord Krishna said, this is an inner enemy of yours because it doesn't let you know who you are. So that means controlling your senses first. Because the grosser the thing, the better you can control. When it becomes subtler, hard to control. Subtlest, almost impossible. And what is the grosser? Between senses, mind, and intellect, what is the grosser? The senses are the grosser. We can control our eyes. That is up to us whether to see something or not to see something. Whether to say those words or not to say those words. That's a grosser. It's almost like, let me give you the example of ice is grosser. When you put a block of ice somewhere, it will stay there. When it becomes water, it will flow. That is subtler. And what is subtlest? When you boil that water and it becomes vapors, you cannot control it. So senses are the grossest. Then comes the mind, then comes the intellect. So controlling first the senses, he says, kill this sinful thing, the destroyer of knowledge and wisdom. Restrain the senses. We got to see, are our senses in our control or not? In Sanskrit, senses are called indriya. Okay, so it's like a knowledge senses and action senses. There are 5 action senses also. Our hands, our legs, our speaking ability, those are all actions. So through actions, we deal with the world. Through the wisdom senses of the Gyan Indriya, we gain the knowledge, the eyes and the ears and the nose and the taste and the touch. So he says, restrain these senses. And where should one take one's stand and cast off the desires? This is a beautiful verse, verse number 42. Scheme for improving ourselves. He says the senses are superior to the body. Okay, senses. That's why they say that if more than 2 of our senses are not working, quality of our life goes away. Senses are superior to the body. Superior to the senses is the mind. Superior to mind is the intellect. One who is even superior to the intellect is the Atma, the soul. He calls it a he with a capital H. So this is a scheme for self-discovery. We should not live a life solely for the senses or solely for the body. We got to see what is superior, what is better, what is higher in us. Higher is the mind. And higher than that is what intellect. And what is higher than the intellect is real me, the Atma, the soul, which is nothing but part of Paramatma, the God. This is also a technique of meditation. It's like a consciously withdraw our identification with the lower layers of our personality. When we sit down and meditate for a few minutes every day, we should all meditate. Let go consciously. We got to pay some attention to it. I'm not the body, I'm not the mind, I'm not the intellect. These are the instruments given to me to function in this beautiful world. Do my duty and clean my mind. Cleaning of mind is again when we clean out our vasanas. Then in the last verse is Thus, knowing him, the Atma, who is superior to intellect, restraining the self by the self. So that means the lower self, restraining the lower self, that means the ego, by the higher self, which is the Atma. He says, kill this enemy in the form of desire. And at the end, he says, no doubt, it is hard to conquer. It's hard to conquer. So something which is hard to conquer, that means because this enemy is so strong, this enemy is sitting in our senses also, enemy is sitting in our mind also, enemy is sitting in our intellect also. So we got to, stronger the enemy, the more work we need to do. So that's why he says, no doubt, hard indeed to conquer. So with this verse, this chapter is concluded, but he is giving us a very special advice to the question which Arjun asked for. And that's why he's saying, through knowledge alone is ignorance ended. Knowledge alone. Through a lived experience of the self, you can end the ignorance of yourself. So in other words, we have to remind ourselves again and again. First, we just take some time out every day, maybe 10 minutes, 15 minutes, or maybe 5 minutes. Take our attention inward. Pay attention to that real you. There's no desire in the real me. All those desires are where? They are either in the senses. This tongue wants to have the sweet taste, that food it wants to eat. Or the eyes want to see beautiful scenes. The ears want to hear that. So all those desires are in the senses first, or in the mind as a thought level, or in the intellect, or even in the ego, the lower self. He is trying to end this ignorance with this knowledge. So this knowledge ends the ignorance. And through the process of meditation, when we withdraw our false identifications with the objects, with the body and mind, the desire faculty that was till now roaming about, functioning in the outer field, is gathered and established at the right place. It is very interesting to note that the philosophy of the Gita preaches a constructive reorganization of life. So it's not something we just only read or something we memorize these verses. We got to ultimately destroy our ignorance. And we got to pay attention. Is my ignorance destroying or not slowly? It's almost like a chiseling it away. Somebody gives you a beautiful piece of marble. Somebody says there is a beautiful statue inside. You got to just chisel the excess out. That's what we need to do with our meditation. Chisel out the excess. Live in all efficiency as a master of circumstances. That's what a Karam Yogi does. Because this chapter's title is Karam Yog. Master of the circumstances, Lord of our own emotions. That's what a Karam Yogi is. And a practitioner who has accomplished this is called a sage, a yogi, a prophet also. It's not only the prophets are only few. We all can reach to that level of being a prophet, where we help others. That's what Lord Krishna is doing, helping Arjun. And through Arjun, he's helping us also. How to do our duties properly and keep on cleaning our vasanas and knowing who we are. So we'll end it over here. I know there's a lot more in this chapter, but basically the title of the chapter is Karam Yog. So we got to do our duties and recognize ourselves slowly but surely who we are in essence. Okay, so any question, comment before we end this class with this mantra? Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Visheshyate. Om Shanti 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 Om. And the next chapter, chapter number 4, is Gyan Karam Sannyas Yoga. So again, you see the Karam term over there, Yoga also, and Gyan also. So what is the difference between chapter 3 and chapter 4? See, in the chapter 3, he told us how to be a Karam Yogi. So now he is taking us a notch up in the chapter 4. As a Karam Yogi, how can you offer all your actions to God? So that Gyan over there, the Gyan term is that God is everywhere, in everybody. So whenever you're doing something, think that you are doing it for God. Whether you are taking care of your child or a spouse, or you are running a company, or even cleaning a floor, does not matter. Action does not matter. Is the motive behind the action can really raise you towards a Karam Yoga. And especially when you see God everywhere, even when you're watering the plants, see God in those plants also. That is the Gyan, that God is everywhere. So this is like from this chapter 3 to chapter 4, that is another step up. But first we got to be a Karam Yogi though. In a nutshell, Karam Yogi means doing your duties. Number 1, skillfully. So no matter what you are doing, keep on adding more and more skill. Keep on doing better and better. Whether you are teaching or learning, or whether you are working somewhere, keep on adding more and more skills. So doing it skillfully, doing it faithfully, and doing it selflessly. Selflessly means you are not seeking the reward. Reward will come to you, but you are not seeking the reward. You're just doing it because this is what you are supposed to do. This is your duty. So that's a Karam Yoga. So once we got to be established in Karam Yoga, only then we can offer all this to God. That is a Gyan Karam Sannyas Yoga. Then we'll see that next step up is the chapter number 5, the Karam Sannyas Yoga. So these are like a different steps on the ladder of evolution. Okay, so we'll end the class here, and maybe Jyoti has a question. Yes.
Hersh, you mentioned masters of circumstances, and what was the following sentence?
Oh,
Master of circumstances.
So normally what we got to do is master of our body. So I don't know what I said earlier,
Yeah,
but
it's okay. I'll listen to the recording.
Yeah, you can listen. I don't know what I said, but master.
You said Lord of our emotions.
Yeah,
Lord
it's like a master
Lord of emotions. Okay, got it. Thank you.
So it's like we got to be. We just let go of our emotions and the body very easily. And we normally say because of this and that. I got angry because of somebody else. I lost control because of this situation. We even give control to the weather. because it was raining, or it was so cold. So we got to become the master of the situations. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. Anybody else?
Hershey, you said
Yes, Rita.
vasanas are the impressions that we have from our past. So our vasanas and our sanskars are the same thing?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they're the same thing, more or less the same thing. Yes. Technically, there's some difference. I mean, one is subtler than the other, but it's the same thing though. Okay. Yeah.
Thank you.
Vasanas are typically called impressions. From the impressions come the sanskars. From the sanskars come the subtle desires, the vrittis. From the vrittis come the solid desires. Like, I want this. You see something, then you realize, I want this. From those desires come the thoughts.
Thoughts.
From the thoughts come the actions. From the actions come the fruits of the actions. So from the fruits of the actions, again, they become vasanas.
Vasanas.
Vasanas. Because at the level of the vasanas, we are not familiar with it. Sanskars, we are little bit familiar with it. See, if we go the other way around, then we can really clean it all up. That's why, what is yoga? Yoga is this chitta vritti nirodha. So vrittis, those impressions, we got to watch before they form into very strong desires. It's almost like a cleaning the house before, even if it gets dirty. Okay. So these are terms right now, just understand vasanas and sanskars, they are very subtle impressions in our mind, and these are our own impressions. We are the one who put them over there, nobody else did. Because we were not aware of it. It's almost like I spilled something because I was not fully awake. But I'm the one who did it. Some in this lifetime, some previous lifetimes too. But we got to take the responsibility of it. See, the problem is that we just want somebody else to be responsible for our problems. No, we got to start taking the responsibility. Only then we can clean it. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Anybody else? Otherwise, I'll ask somebody to